All right, we're live. So
Yeah.
today we're going to talk about wearing masks because apparently it's got to be talked about. And well, we kind of don't give a rip if we're going to get heat for it. But before before we get to masks and numbskulls that won't wear them on planes,
Yeah.
what what's going on with your office, Ben? You've
Well,
got gray and white, which looks like circa cheap office space,
hey.
1986. But then you got this bright yellow section of books down there. What books are those?
Oh, those are the various volumes of the Encyclopedia of Industrial and Organizational Psychology, my friend. You
Okay.
know, I got that set for free because I contributed a couple chapters. So, you know,
Yeah, for our listener that just joined, we're going to be talking about masks and why you should wear them.
right.
Numbskulls on planes that don't wear masks. And right now, we're just kind of giving Ben grief for his background.
Well, I mean, uh, I, what, you don't like books?
I mean, no, I obviously hate books. Look at my background.
It's not as interesting as your background. I don't have 5 musical instruments or however many you got. 6 maybe. You got a ukulele. Is that a ukulele you got there behind on the
Yeah,
bookshelf?
yeah, that's a uke.
Nice.
One of my grad school buddies gave me that thing. So
Sweet. Yeah, but I probably do need something a little bit more interesting, maybe something over here, right? I don't know. We'll figure it out. It's a work in progress, I think. So, we'll figure it out, make it more interesting. Can't always be as interesting as you though, you
yeah,
know?
so well,
Sweet.
that's a double-edged sword there.
Yeah, yeah, that come being being like Chris Everett comes with its own warning label.
As I always say that, growing up, I was more notorious than popular.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
awesome. If you're listening live now, feel free to say hi. And but we'll get to it. Let's talk about masks. So what
Oh,
we're looking at, we got the CNN article.
right.
Um,
Yeah, so this article, the headline is "A passenger was removed from a flight for refusing to wear a face mask." Right? So, tensions over wearing face masks led to a passenger's removal from an American Airlines flight on Wednesday as airlines enforce stricter safety measures. So, this guy, Brandon Straka, was asked to get off a flight. Apparently, he's a commentator of some sort who refused to wear it and said it's not the law and I'm not wearing a mask.
yeah, so let's Google this Straka guy. Brian Straka would not wear a mask on the flippin' plane.
Right,
Um,
right.
all right.
So I have flown in the not too distant past. I flew on May 17th and I flew on June 6th. And
With the Navy, this was
yeah,
necessary travel.
it was some mission essential travel for the Navy, but it was on commercial airplanes. And you know what? I mean, everybody was wearing a mask. Like it's policy for the airlines. And you know, I wore like the no kidding N95 mask that's super tight and painful, and I wore that all the way from here to, so I'm in the Cleveland, Ohio area. I wore that all the way to um, LA. So it was a many hours of wearing that
All
bad
right,
boy. But
I'm putting this numbskulls, uh, right? So Brian Strack, I looked him up on Twitter.
all
Walk
right,
Away campaign founder, booking media.
hey, it's
Genghis.
Colette.
Colette, all the way from the Netherlands.
Yes, our yes, we both knew Colette at the same time over in lovely Afghanistan. Colette's awesome.
Yeah. So hi, Colette. Nice to have somebody from the Netherlands joining us. So anyway, this Brandon Straka is former liberal, gay, on a mission to hashtag red pill humanity. So like, you really got to say this is probably a PR stunt for him. I
Yeah.
know. Let me go on a plane, be an obtuse jerk, and not wear a mask, and then get kicked off, and then
Yeah.
help, help! I'm being repressed.
Yeah. Well, They're
Yeah,
taking away my liberty.
yeah,
You
come
know,
see the whatever in the system, and that's just garbage, man, garbage.
yeah, yeah. You know, it's interesting because I see some people who have this argument that, wearing a mask is an infringement upon my personal liberty and you shouldn't make me do it. And the thing is that, I mean, the same argument can be used for wearing a mask, saying, look, by you not wearing a mask, you're infringing on my ability and my health and well-being because, it's all about you spreading, your germs and whatnot. And so, I think
But
you can use the same
let's
argument.
be honest. So this happened. So we had a situation up here in Park City where parents wanted to say we have carte blanche over our kids. They had a beef with the curriculum,
Mhm.
and that's just not true. You can't beat your kids,
Right.
right? And part of us getting together and along as a society is a reducing some of our rights so we can get along. Like I can't just go as fast as I want without consequence on the highway. It's not a
Yeah.
speed suggestion, it's a speed limit, you know?
Well, I mean, that's the basic idea of the social contract, right?
Yeah.
That we make with the government. So
So
anyway,
yeah, this guy gets on the plane, gets thrown off a plane for not wearing a mask and says he's being repressed. You can't make me. And that's just the most juvenile, petty thing ever.
yeah.
Um, we make people wear clothes. And in my case, people are thankful for that law.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so what drives people to say you can't make me wear a mask, Ben?
Well, I mean, there's a couple things. One, it could just be a PR stunt, which it seems to be in
Yeah,
this
well,
case.
in this case, but it's like,
Yeah.
forget this tool
But
stack.
at the same
Let's
time,
talk
there are
broader.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, there's also, we've been cooped up in a variety of ways, at least, here in the United States. And, it differs based upon where you are, what state you're in. But we've been forcibly cooped up to some degree. And that's a change from normal. Humans don't really like change. And when we have to do something different for a while, it can be exhausting. We have to devote more cognitive energy to it. And because of that, we can start to have some rebellion against that. We start to say, no, I want to go back to normal. I want it because this is how it should be.
Yeah, I mean,
And
maybe in a best case scenario, but if I
I'm
tell
giving the
my
benefit of the
kids,
doubt. Yeah.
"Hey, you gotta go to bed." "No." They get on their full on William Wallace, "Freedom," and they got their spears. We
Yeah.
just don't like to be told what to do,
Yeah.
depending on what mood we're in. So if we are amped up, we have
Sure.
more anxiety. And that's that whole idea with de-escalation of force that you get more flies with honey type thing.
You do. Yeah. So I mean, I think that's so certainly we don't like being told what to do to some degree. We like to feel like we have agency, that we have the ability to make our own rules and so forth. Especially when they are perhaps unfamiliar rules. And when they are something new. You don't see a whole lot of people nowadays railing against, certain restrictions we have. I remember when I was a kid, some people would rail against seatbelt laws and stuff like that, for example.
Yeah, and I
But
don't know anybody who thinks it's a good idea to drive quickly without a seatbelt
right, right.
or drive anywhere, really.
Yeah, yeah. So, I think there are a variety of reasons why people may not want to wear a mask, but what does the science say? Should we wear masks?
Well, I mean, that's the dilemma, right? Because the CDC and stuff had some communication faux pas early in this event. And we talk
Yeah,
about that in our communication podcasts about crisis communication, all that, and how important it is to have a super clear message. So I think, one, there's a problem. People have a hard time refreshing initial messages that they receive,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
or forgiving people for making mistakes, or if somebody deliberately misinforms initially, well, it's just like, well, you misinformed me, so now I don't listen to anything anymore. That's a type of taking your ball and going home. That's not being a good teammate on this boat of life, right?
yeah. Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. But it does seem that the consensus, at least from what I've read, now is yeah, if everybody wore a mask when they are in closer proximity to each other, we could do a pretty darn good job of reducing the spread of this thing.
Right.
And
And so if you're gonna hit up some of the protests right now, wear a mask, right? If
yeah,
right, if you're gonna go to Trump's big Tulsa rally and that kind of thing, wear a mask. If you're going to be grocery shopping where immunocompromised people may have to go pick up their medications at the pharmacy, wear a mask.
yeah.
And I like to
Well,
just
and
think
it's
of
not
it
just
as just like wearing clothes. I wear clothes so I don't blind my neighbors, right?
how considerate
And
of you,
it's a polite thing to do.
right?
And the same thing where people have like different world views or religious views. There's certain things we don't talk about in the workplace, not because these aren't things that good to be talked about in the public forum, but because there's some pro-social behaviors you can engage in to help have some, social grease. It's not worth fighting over.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and you were talking about, if you're going to be in a space with immunocompromised people, wearing a mask is good. That's exactly right. It's not about you and your level of perhaps risk, right? The argument shouldn't be, hey, I feel healthy, therefore, and I am in a low risk category, and therefore I shouldn't have to wear a mask. No, the point is that you might be asymptomatically carrying COVID. And wearing a mask will help prevent or reduce the probability of you spreading it to other people. So it's about the other people. It's not about you. And, because that mask may or may not help so much with, preventing you from getting COVID, but it definitely will help with the spread of, those droplets of stuff that flies out when
Yeah,
you cough.
you see like some kind of pictogram and somebody sneezes and it's just like whoosh, like you're like
Oh, it's
Pete's
gross.
dragon or something. It's bad. And one thing that really bothered me is I remember when this was breaking out and I was talking with some senior officers in the Utah Guard, and they're, oh, well, this is just a flu. Oh, we're making much ado about nothing. And I don't know quite what drives, some of that. It's like, well, I hope you take better evidence-based thinking to any like a company command or battalion command position that you're in than you are to evaluating this evidence right here. But there's certain things that get kind of, I don't know, this is probably not the right term, but like culturally coded, right? That if somebody comes in to say, um, you know, X because that person looks and talks like Y, it can't be true. I just
Mm,
write it off. You see this in a lot of the vaccine. Like I'll take an unapologetic stance for the evidence base of vaccinating kids. Um, but you'll find somebody that absolutely believes in, say, evolution or climate change, but is an anti-vaxxer. And you well, how does that work? The same scientific process that brought you those, what's different here? And
yeah.
ah,
Well, and I think like I think a lot of it does get kind of mixed up with some of the tribalism and the ideologies, and this thing has turned into a little bit of a political type of a little bit of a political type of polarizing topic, right? And so I think that's part of it too. We like to identify with our tribes. We like to have those kind of this is my group and this is what my group thinks and us versus them, right? We like that, and that's a very powerful and useful instinct when we are living in very small groups, out in the jungles and so forth, right? In early civilizations, tribalism was
yeah,
very
yeah. If
helpful.
if you if you find yourself stranded in the desert with 9 guys, if I found myself and they were all anti-vaxxers and it looks like discontent will not be tolerated and be like, yeah, man, screw those vaccines. Well, let's
Yeah,
start walking and survive. But there's so
right.
much of that, especially as our economy becomes more volatile. There's
Yeah.
less of a safety net. there's all of these kinds of things where people get thrown off the wagon. Economically, these social ties become super important. We have all kinds of research around that with just, with the mobile workforce in our neighborhoods aren't, people move now. And you don't have the same type stuff. And you see some of that stuff stratifying socioeconomically. And so it could just be super challenging not to have a group of people that can help you.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And so, the thing is that these tribal instincts that we have aren't quite as helpful in certain contexts. Right. So
Right.
especially when we're talking about these big topics that are more political and so forth in nature.
But they're not even consistent. And this is how I
No.
know that it's more of the emotional chimp part of the brain, so to speak, that's going on. They'll say, well, you should not force companies to bake a cake for a marriage they don't approve of. Companies should be able to do what they want. Okay. Costco says you got to wear a mask if you're going to come in here. Man, forget Costco. How dare you're like, well, wait a minute here. I actually know somebody that has that view, and it's that this doesn't make sense. You don't get to do both. Um, I mean, it's
Right.
and
Yeah,
cutting through that stuff. It's about diffusing those emotions, right? I don't want to
right.
wear a mask. Yeah, man, me neither. And they're like, oh, got a comrade here. Yeah, I mean, they're itchy. I mean, as somebody, they fog up my glasses.
Yeah.
I mean, I wear a mask, but they fog up my glasses, and it's super annoying.
I
So
heard
I
there's
just,
like some hacks for that out there. I don't know what they are, but
yeah, if you've got a hack for fogging glasses with COVID masks on, please email us or drop it in the comments. But yeah, I mean, I don't know.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the military policy right now in the U.S. Department of Defense is, if you're going to be on base and you're going to be working in an area where you can't maintain 6 feet of distance, or as we call it in the Navy, 1 fathom away from someone, then you should wear a mask.
right.
And that seems pretty reasonable. Now, there have been some studies and some experts who have said, 6 feet when you're indoors, actually, it actually needs to be a little bit more than that. Because especially if you're like coughing and sneezing around you and so forth. But that's what we're doing right now in the Department of Defense, and it seems to be working. I mean, I guess military folks are maybe a little bit more accustomed to adapting to new things that they're told to do.
Well, it doesn't matter if you think it's stupid in the military. You're gonna
Right.
just like, hey, you know what? We're gonna do this because it's stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't care. We're doing it anyway. That's
Right.
right. That's right.
So yeah, I gotta say, wear masks. And
Yeah.
and if you don't want to wear a mask, just be socially distanced.
Right. You always have the option to just stay in your house or go stand out in the middle of a park somewhere and don't associate with humans. But I think we as Ben Barron and Chris Everett and the Indigo podcast and what we stand for, I think we can actually take kind of a clear stand on this and say, you know what? Masks probably make a lot of sense, and just wear
Right.
one if you're going to be around folks and you're going to be in close proximity to them, because I think that's going to help us as we move forward in the coming months with regard to this pandemic, which is not necessarily going to be going away, but we are going to just have to learn to deal with it. That's the reality.
Right. I mean, we'll get updated directions. Things will change. But
Yeah.
like this is just this idea. There's this social posturing that people do. So I had this situation. I live in Park City, Utah. There's this, we have some really tight knit Facebook groups that we're involved with. So, what's the conditions of the snow conditions on the canyon? People actually go to Facebook. It's like, hey, I was the first one down there at 4 a.m. Roads aren't plowed. Don't go. These kinds of things. And one, I guess there was somebody that was keying and tagging with spray paint the sides of these cars. And, people are like, I hope they catch them. That's like really disappointing. And that's
Mhm.
totally great thing to say. But then, somebody said, this is why we have guns, or this is why I have guns. And then it got like a billion likes right away. And you're just like, wait a minute. I mean, it's obviously some punk kids, right? But I didn't
Yeah.
I didn't know the sentence for King was death by neighbor.
Yeah, yeah. I don't really see where, capital punishment comes into play when you know, using deadly force to prevent the keying of a vehicle, right?
Yeah, but this is the idea, and you think of that. Remember when they had the crying Native American Indian and the pollution commercial, and they could
Mm,
trace there was a time where people would, pollute a lot, and then they kind of got socially shamed by this commercial. It's like, why would you litter on America type thing? And
mhm.
some of these elements of social shaming, can you believe this person doesn't have a mask? Or, I think those can be good tools, but only if you've got a good relationship with the person. I wouldn't go up to some guy that was like, if The Rock was in the grocery store and not wearing a mask, I might say something, but I'm probably going to give myself a fathom or two head start for running.
When you say The Rock, you're referring to, Dwayne Johnson, right?
Yeah, is that
Yeah.
is the
Yes, I know.
Too Fast, Too Furious 12 or
I
whatever
had
number they're
well,
on right now?
it was so funny. So, we were watching a movie with the kids because he's had a really pretty good acting career post WWE. He was a wrestler, and
Mm.
my kids didn't realize that he was a wrestler because that was way before they were born. And so I had to introduce him. I said, he was The Rock. And so it was so funny. I had my 5-year-old. She was going, "Can you smell what The Rock is cooking?" It was great. So
I don't know. I'm kind of embarrassed you even know. Like, I don't know that.
really? Oh my gosh. Yeah, The Rock. He
You
he was
watch
like
male soap opera? That's what
no,
wrestling
this was
is,
I mean,
right?
this was like back in like my undergrad days. It was impossible. Like, I mean, maybe I didn't study as hard as you did, but I thought it
No,
was
you
kind of
didn't have to study as hard as I did.
oh please. I mean, I think it was kind of part of the culture. I never would sit down and like watch these things, but it was just kind of, oh yeah, that's The Rock, and that's what he does. Like he had this whole thing. He was like the people's champion. That's what he called himself. But
Yeah, so
yeah. So if he were in the grocery store, you would not go up to him and say, "Look, Jack Wagon, wear this,"
no,
because
I
he's
would probably, because knowing his emotional stance, I'd probably be like, "Hey, man, did you forget your mask? Would you like one?" Which
yeah,
is way less like, "Hey, put this mask on," or, "I'm gonna tweet pictures of you," that kind of thing.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's like,
Well, and
go
but
ahead.
you raised a really interesting point, I think, that maybe you didn't realize how interesting I think it is. And you talked about littering. And littering is actually a really interesting example of, a something that was pretty normal apparently. So back before you and I were born,
Yeah, you can see
apparently.
pictures in New York were a wasteland, kids
Yeah,
playing on piles of trash like you'd see in
right.
Afghanistan and stuff.
Yeah, or just like going down the highway, it was just commonplace to just kind of chuck your stuff out the
Yeah.
window. And this was a thing. And there was some legislation that came into play and some fines, but by and large, what seems to have really, made littering go away is kind of a cultural shared understanding that that is a really not great thing to do. And it's just, I think it highlights the power of, changing cultural norms, to make things more acceptable. So with this mask thing, have you ever spent any time over in any Asian countries, Japan, China, or any of those?
No, no. Hey, just
Yeah.
a sec. I gotta get rid of this phone thing. Hold a sec.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Keep going.
Well, yeah, sure. So what I was gonna say is, that in Asian cultures, it's completely appropriate and very normal to wear a mask if you're feeling sick. In fact, if you were sick and coughing and sneezing on a public transit, area, you would, and you didn't have a mask. I think people would look at you, um, look at you with a lot of condescension, right, and judgment. But here in America, that's not something that is really part of our social, um, way of thinking. But I think as we continue to move forward, perhaps it will be perhaps a good outcome of the COVID pandemic at least in Western cultures in the United States, might be that it becomes more of a cultural norm that when you're feeling sick, you wear a mask to help keep other people from getting sick. Like that.
Yeah, I mean,
that would be
you
a
see
nice
it in
outcome.
all over the web, images, videos of Japan, all that kind of stuff. Of course, the high pollution days, which I don't know if it does anything for high pollution, but yeah. So just to kind of wrap up for the, because a lot of people have come on and then dropped off, but we talked about this guy who most likely did a PR stunt of not wearing a mask. Those kinds of guys need to be socially shamed for that behavior. This is not something you want to get your Twitter points with. I mean, that's a no-go.
Yeah.
And we talked about pro-socially how to approach people with masks, and about the mask issue, how to be positive about that. And then everybody just is getting a little bit, and I don't have a problem. People use this word triggered as a pejorative, right? And that's how our minds work. Like if I go say something demeaning about your wife, you're going to be triggered. I might not live to the next day, right? That's just how our psychology works. And we shouldn't criticize people for being a human, right?
Right.
And we're going to have different feelings about freedom and about that kind of stuff. But I think if we take let's be on a team together approach, and hey man, like we're friends, right? I mean, this is really important to me. Can you just help me out and do it? My wife doesn't like me hanging out with you because you don't wear a mask, and I'd like to hang out or something.
Yeah.
Those are some of the stuff,
Wear a mask, people. It's a good thing.
Yeah, this wasn't worth a podcast episode, so we just thought we'd bring it up here.
Yeah.
All right.